Okay, so let's start talking about some angle relationships. Yesterday we talked about angle addition, how we can add two angles together. And we're going to incorporate some of that idea today, just like we did yesterday where we can add the two parts of the angle together to equal the whole. So the vocabulary words we need to be aware of today are complementary angles. And complementary angles are two angles that add up to be 90 degrees. So basically they're going to make a right angle. And if you remember from yesterday, the right angle is always going to have a little square there in the corner. Okay, so if we are going to have basically it's going to be a right angle. We'll have a little square in the corner. If we have a ray coming out of here somewhere, basically we're going to have, this is like angle 1, this is angle 2. Those are our two parts. We can add them together to equal 90 degrees. And we did an example of that actually yesterday where we had two angles that in a right angle that added together to be 90. And similarly, where if we had supplementary angles or a linear pair, okay, supplementary or linear pair, either of those, they're kind of synonymous. They're two angles that add up to equal 180 degrees, and they make a straight line. So basically your picture for this is going to look something like this, where you have a straight line, and then you'll have a ray coming off of it. And again, we know it's a straight line, so we know it's going to add to 180. We'd have angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1 plus angle 2 will equal 180 degrees. And again, that's either called supplementary or linear pair. Okay, and we're just using, on both of these examples, we are just using angle addition, which is what we learned yesterday. Okay, something a little bit different is what's called vertical angles. Okay, vertical angles are two angles with the same vertex. And generally speaking, when we're talking about a pair of vertical angles, it usually looks something like that, where we have a cross or an X kind of a thing. And what it creates is it creates 1, 2, 3, 4 angles inside of those two lines. And basically vertical angles are across from each other. Okay, so the fact that they're across from each other means that angle 1 and angle 3, there's my little angle symbol, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. And the other thing is that they are equal. Vertical angles are always equal to each other. So that means, I had a little disruption there in my video, but that means that angle 1, they're equal to each other. So angle 1 equals angle 3. Okay? And then the same idea here is if we have 2 and 4, they are also share the same vertex, and they are also across from each other, which means angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles. And just like angles 1 and 3, angle 2 equals angle 4. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go through some examples here and talk about how to how to classify them first by their relationship, and then we are also going to talk about how to set up the equations. And again, just like yesterday, we'll talk about how to set up the equations, but we will not actually solve them out. On your homework, you're going to have to actually solve them out to find x. Okay, so our directions up here say identify it as complementary, supplementary linear pair, or vertical. Okay, so as we're looking at this first one, I've got this little square in my corner. Little square in my corner automatically makes me say right angle, so I know that's a 90-degree angle. 90-degree angle means, so 90-degree angle means that it is complementary. And let's spell that whole word out, because on your class kick, you're going to have to spell it all out. So make sure you're seeing how to spell it correctly. And that means that we can add them together to equal 90 degrees. So we would add our part, right? Here's our part, plus our other part is going to equal the whole, which is 90. Remember, that's our whole, is 90. And then again, we would just go ahead and solve that out. Okay, on the second one here, it's a straight line, right? Which a straight line is 180 degrees. It's a line, and thinking logically, it's a pair of angles that make a straight line. We would call it a linear pair or supplementary. So we could either call it supplementary, and again, spell it all the way out, supplement, A-R-Y, or linear pair. Okay, which means we know that they are going to add to 180 degrees. I'm going to use angle addition. So we're going to take, here's part, and here's part. We're going to add them together. Let's go with a different color. 3 plus 5x, that's part number 1. 97 is part number 2, and they equal 180 degrees. And then we'll pretty much combine our like terms and get x all by itself. Okay, looking at this one, that square corner looks a little bit different. It's on the outside instead of on the inside. Still means that it makes two right angles. If you see that square, we're going to know 90 degrees, and we are going to know if it's 90 degrees that it's going to be complementary. Making sure we're spelling it correctly, which means they are going to add together to equal 90 degrees. So in our equation, we would just write 3x plus 1, that's part 1. The other part is x plus 17, and they are going to add to equal 90 degrees. Oops, that didn't fit on there very good. And then again, we would combine our like terms and get x by itself. The next one, okay, this is not a linear pair. If it was a linear pair, our two angles would be here, making a straight line. However, they are not making a straight line. They are not a linear pair. We have an x, and they have the same vertex, and they are across from each other, okay? Which means if they are across from each other in the V, if you will, of the angles, the vertical angles that they are. Hence, though we have, these are vertical, and vertical is V-E-R-T-I-C-A-L. Everybody spells that incorrectly. They are vertical angles, which means they are equal to each other. So we would just set up our equation, 2x equals 78. No angle addition on this one. And then, looking at this one again, okay, we've got two lines that are crossing. They are across from each other. Okay, they have the same vertex, but they are across from each other. So these are also going to be vertical angles. Vertical, again, ends in A-L. So we would set them equal to each other. So we would have 1 plus 3x, that's the first angle, equals 85. And the last one, if you notice the difference here, other than the fact that, I mean, it doesn't look like two lines, but even if we extended our line out like that, notice that these vertical angles are across from each other. Linear pairs are next to each other. Okay, so linear pairs are next to each other, whereas vertical angles are across from each other. Okay, so since they are next to each other, they are a linear pair. Together they make a straight line, which means they're going to add to 180 degrees. So we are going to do our two parts, 2x plus 1 plus x minus 10 equals 180 degrees. And again, combine our like terms and solve for x. Okay, so making sure we know the difference. Next to each other, linear pair, add to 180. Across from each other, vertical angles, they equal each other. Right angle in the corner here tells us it's complementary and adds up to 90. Again, across from each other here on this one. And again, linear pair, they are next to each other, and complementary because it's got that little square in the corner. So you can find your homework in the class Kick, and it is called Angle Relationships is the name of the class Kick, I believe. So good luck.